Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's edition is going to be a little bit different. Today I want to speak about what got me interested in model railroading in the first place. I think this is something that many model railroaders or people interested in trains really don't think about. We simply take it for granted that trains are unique and special, and they hold a special place in our lives. But people from the outside might look and wonder, well, what got you interested in the first place? In today's video, I want to speak about what got me interested in trains, model railroads, as well as kind of maybe my story will inspire others to think about their own journey in model railroading. I don't think of model railroading or interest in trains as something that's static. Rather, I think sometimes our interests change as we go on and develop. I think back to my first couple model railroads, and as much as I was interested in the Illinois Central Gulf, in one sense, I just bought a bunch of stuff that I liked, and it really didn't make sense. So today I want to tell you a little bit about my story and what got me interested, especially with Christmas coming up as well, because it's tied into Christmas. And I think many of us have a very similar experience there. Many of us, I don't know, depending upon how old you are, maybe you got your first Lionel set at Christmas time. For myself, it was when I was in the second grade, and my parents bought me an H.O. Tyco train set. They also bought a couple model power buildings, and I remember opening up under the tree, seeing this train set and accessories like telephone poles and different cars, and I was very excited, and I was just ready to get started. My dad ended up buying a board and putting down a little circle of track, and that's basically how I ran trains for years. Just a circle of track on a piece of wood, just lying there on the floor. And of course, that gets kind of boring. I had my parents buy different buildings as time went on, but it was still a very simple oval of track. Well, as time goes on, imagine I kind of got bored with that, and I thought it was a kid's toy. And so I just kind of boxed it up, put it out in the garage, and didn't think anything more of it. Then when I was in the 7th or 8th grade, there was a art project that we were involved in, and like so many grade school, middle school, junior high art projects, you go and get a stack of magazines from the bin, and you start cutting out pictures and making some sort of collage or whatnot. And I remember going and looking at these magazines, and there was one magazine in particular. It wasn't even a train magazine, it was some sort of general interest magazine. And there was a story about a model railroader and this layout that he built. And I remember looking at this, and it went on this article for several pages. There were a number of pictures of this layout, and he was talking about his own interest in the hobby. At which point I realized this wasn't just simply a kid's thing. This was an older individual, an older man who was inspired by a prototype and then went and essentially tried to recreate that prototype there on his layout. And that just struck me because then he was talking about all the skills that was required, whether it was electrical, whether it was doing historical research. And I realized how multifaceted the hobby truly was. And so I remember going home that night. Well, first I went to my teacher and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this article. Do you mind if I cut out these few pages of this magazine and take it home with me? At which point the teacher said, sure, go ahead, take that article home with you. So I remember ripping those pages out and going home and reading that article day after day. And then after about a week or two, I went back to my parents and I said, hey, remember that train stuff that we've got out in the garage? I want to get that out again, but I want to do something a little bit more. And so my dad was extremely supportive. We went to the lumber store, bought a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and ended up getting some legs, and kind of built a frame that we could put this plywood on. And there I was, really starting building my own first layout. Again, this was HO because that's what I had. And this went on for a period of time. I was saving a lot of my allowance, that sort of thing, and buying different buildings and really getting back into the hobby. Then probably about my, I guess maybe sophomore, junior year of high school, I decided I wanted to go into N-scale because I could do so much more. I was wanting to run some larger engines like an SD40-2 that the Illinois Central was running at that time, and the radius was just ever so short enough that it would occasionally derail as I was going around the corners. And I thought to myself, I could do so much more in N-scale. So ended up pushing the 4x8 sheet of plywood away and then going and essentially building an open box uh, uh, layout where I was in the actual middle of the train layout, and it was a 10 by 10 N-scale, single track. But again, not exactly prototypical. I was wanting to model the Illinois Central Gulf, but no particular place. So in one sense, that's kind of what got me interested in train layouts, model railroading. For me, also, trains were an important part of my childhood growing up. I remember going and seeing the actual prototypes. I lived there in a small town in southern Illinois, and I would often ride my bike to go to our local swimming pool. As I was going to the swimming pool, I would have to pass by the Illinois Central tracks, the St. Louis subdivision. And so I would be riding my bike, or my mom would be driving me to the pool. And I remember seeing all these coal trains going by at that time. I'll never forget, in one sense, I think it was probably the very last caboose that I ever saw there, kind of going down the tracks there outside of my hometown. And the conductor was there in this orange, simple ICG caboose, just simply waving at us. And what a profound effect it had on me growing up. That the train crew always seemed to be extremely friendly and welcoming of people beside the tracks, watching the trains. When I was in high school, I would often go down by the train tracks, a lot of times in the evening, at night, just watching the passing trains go by. It was just always an exciting time. Or again, when I was younger, my parents would drive me down to different, in one sense, hot spots. Growing up, would go to Centralia Railroad days and go and see some of the different locomotives and cars that they had available. Or going down, for instance, to Carbondale and just looking at trains beside the rail yard. So trains have always been, in one sense, an important part of my life. And I think especially with Christmas coming up, that's something that we need to remember. I recently was at a train show, and for me, one of the great things is seeing at a train show the number of young children there, just looking at these layouts, being very inspired and wanting to bring that sense of wonder back to their own homes. Even if it's a simple oval layout, they're inspired, they're wanting to get into the hobby. So I think one of the best things that we as model railroaders can do is share our own enthusiasm with whatever we're modeling, as well as constantly inviting people, especially the younger people, into the hobby. You know, we all at one time are beginners in the hobby. And in one sense, every day we have an opportunity to learn and grow as modelers and as railroad enthusiasts. So I invite you to continue your own journey and inspire others in their journey as well. Thank you very much.